Ontario's dominant religion is Catholicism. More than a quarter of people identify as Catholics, but back in the 90s, 43% of people identified as Protestants.
Ontario in the last 30 years has undergone more change religiously than at any time in the province's history.
As Protestant numbers went down over the decades, the share of Catholics overtook for the first time in 2011. What do you think is behind that?
First, just raw immigration, the places from which Canada is sourcing immigrants, they tend to be Catholic.
Canada-wide stats back that up. In 2011, 15% of Canadian Catholics were immigrants. That increased to 18% by 2021.
They become more Catholic when they are here.
Really?
If you take some places around Toronto that have a large Italian population, such as Woodbridge, you'll see people there going to Mass in ways that Italians don't go to Mass. But the reason behind this is the fact that the one cultural connection with being Italian that stands out for them, in addition to food, is religion. It's also second and third generation immigrants reviving Catholicism in places like Canada.
Another part of that revival, young Christians. In the UK, stats show a slight attendance drop for older Christians from 2018 to 2024, while among young Christians, attendance soared from 4 to 16% over that same time period.
When young people grow up with what is called existential insecurity, just they don't feel secure about their life situation and their formative years, those cohorts tend to be way more religious. In Canada, the people who grew up in the Great Depression were super religious. The people who grew up in the 60s, less so. I think sometimes in the West we have this thought that if churches just liberalize, then they'll grow and be healthier. But often it has been conservative religious movements that have done better.
And yet, while Catholics became the #1 religious group in 2011, the amount of people identifying as no religion has shot up from 5% in 1991 to 32% by 2021. Does that speak to the overall polarization of the population?
Yeah, definitely. If you look at those numbers in detail, you'll find that people will identify themselves as somehow spiritual or faithful without being corporately affiliated. So their reaction is to corporations, is to church as a structure, not to faith. So the polarization is around what people think of institutions. Not unlike what we see in politics, where people either feel disheartened by what happens with institutional political powers and don't want to vote or vote for someone who is clearly against the institution, and some other people turn entirely towards the institution and put all their faith in it.